I'm Sarah Barkley. I work at UBC, so if you do see me on today, it's because I'm still on West Coast time, so apologies for that. There's not enough espresso in the world to erase this jet lag. It's only 3 hours. I'm the Senior Director of Athletics and Recreation, so I oversee all of the fundraising and alumni engagement in our athletics department. And our athletics department is where Lee and I met many, many years ago. So if you see some of this team dynamic, it's because we've known each other for 25 years. Over to you.
She actually made me go on a 10K run yesterday. I only ever go on 3K runs. So if you see me sitting, that is why. I'm Lee Sandison. I run RealPath. It's an insights and strategy company. And we essentially help nonprofits understand who their supporters are so that they can get more of them and giving for longer. Okay, so today, essentially, we're going to talk about donor lifetime value, and we're going to do it through a case study at UBC Athletics. So we're going to talk about how we got donor insights, and we used those insights to develop concepts that we then piloted, focused on lifetime value and extending relationships with donors. So pulling people across from the front of the journey all the way through to the back, where it's all about like hyper engagement and ongoing love forever. So we're going to talk about this specific case study today with UBC, but this type of work, experience design using insights to really activate lifetime value, can go across any type of organization. And we've seen this bring in lots of funds for everything from environmental organizations to international development to children's orgs to even political organizations. Like it's very broad reaching, and we're going to talk you through kind of the scope, what we did, and then the results. So it should be fun. Also, any questions you have, we'll do that same thing at the end. But if you feel like nodding or shaking your heads or clapping or stomping your feet, that's great. We're like used to webinars all the time, and it's like, oh my God, I can actually like see people's faces and understand that you're listening to me, and it's kind of a cool thing. So Sarah's going to talk through kind of why we started the project in the first place.
So one unique thing, I'll give major props to Leanna because she did an incredible job of really speaking to how she looped in Ian throughout her case study. This is a hard turn. We are not going to be doing that. So as we were watching, we were like, oh my God, oh my God. But the reason why we're going to talk to you is the work that we did before. So UBC is an Engaging Networks client. Those of you who aren't aware, UBC is a huge mothership of fundraising. There's almost 300 fundraisers at UBC. It is mega. And so just give that perspective because it's quite what we do is quite different. It's like an aircraft carrier. And we have, I actually looked into this before we came, but of how many people are using EN, and the answer is tons and lots. But on my team, I have 9 people, and we have a mix of major gift fundraising, but also a very big annual program. Athletics is quite unique. We use a lot of crowdfunding. We do Giving Day, an online Giving Day. It's huge. For perspective, our team raises between $5 and $6 million a year, and we have about 4,600 donors. That number of donors has quadrupled since 2019. So we have a huge challenge that we have to steward them, thank them, and make sure that we're doing everything to give them an excellent experience. So what we needed to do is I started in this role that I'm currently in 7 years ago. One of the major issues that we had is that we received all of our fundraising from white men over 60. And I, being a passionate fundraiser, realized we have men's teams and we have women's teams, and we can't have all of the money going to the men's teams. That is not equitable. It's not good for the news. And thankfully, we addressed this years ago because in this day and age, that would not fly. So I was challenged in this role to try and uncover new donors, new populations to raise money for women's teams. We only have so much time when we do major gift fundraising, and we really needed to make sure that we were able to do the work to uncover who these people were. So we had to build our donor pipeline, attract new donors, especially on the women's side. So we connected with RealPath. I was very fortunate. This was our pilot project, and we talked through what we were going to do in order to find this population. Challenges with female donors at UBC. A number of them got married and changed their last names. If they played before 1998, we do not have their email because everybody's emails are embarrassing, like hotgirl99 at rocketmail.com. That is not my email. But the whole idea of how do we find these people? And so that's really where RealPath comes in, because we were able to talk through a program, and this is what we want to share with you. We'll say we've presented this before. We had an hour and 20 minutes. So this is, if it seems rushed, that's why.
Fine. Okay, so this is a fairly standard process that we go through. And essentially, we're going to show you after this an example of each of the output of each stage. But overall, what we're trying to do is define concepts that are broad enough that can like live into the future, but also we had a very tight window of time. So we had from the start of this project, 6 weeks later, there was a specific alumni event we knew we needed to capitalize on. We weren't sure how yet, but we were like, we need to get everything in order within this 6 weeks to be able to use that. So we needed something tight enough, broad enough that it can go into the future, and tight enough to like meet this 6 week mark. So essentially how we do this is we start by learning everything we can about what the organization believes their current donor journey is. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with donor journeys generally. You're using that day to day in your life. What we kind of see happening is that lots of organizations are using donor journeys that are assumptive. So their donor journeys are based on their own touch points. They're like, oh, this is when we talk to them. 3 days later we send this, and then 2 weeks later we do that, and that's the journey. What we're trying to do is say, okay, that is actually an assumptive journey, because you don't understand anything about what the donor's perspective on this is. So you can learn a lot from the quant that you're putting into that donor journey, but you can't always understand the why. So you see, okay, people are dropping off at this point, and then what we're trying to do is, okay, let's talk to the donors and find out why. So essentially what we're doing is learn everything you can, go and speak to supporters, speak to people who are loosely connected, people who used to be donors but aren't anymore, people who might potentially be donors, but you have to talk to them in the right way. So we're kind of going after that broader base to then pull into step 2, which is mapping. These are all of the insights. This is your donor journey that is extrospective. So it's your real donor journey, hence the name RealPath. And then from there, we can go, okay, here are all of the insights. Let us now design what the experience would be based on those supporter insights. So instead of using your assumptions, throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks, you're using a very concrete fact, evidence. These are insights. Now we're going to do this. And then the next phase was implementation. So again, we started that 6 weeks later, and then of course measuring. So we're going to take you through all of the kind of outputs of this. All right. Okay. I realize that you can't read this at all. It's the tiniest writing ever. I'm not expecting you to, nor do I really want you to. But essentially what I'm trying to show here is just what the donor journey overall looks like. So you've got kind of at the top, you've got the phase and the steps that someone goes through. You've got all of the channels that those things are happening on. You've got quotes, what supporters are saying about that actual moment in time in the journey. And very importantly, you've got this line, we've got like green and orange. Try not to use red because it's mean, but orange is like, things aren't working so well here. So if you can imagine, you've got, let's say you have 100 people starting this journey, and then by the end of it, you've got like 3 people who are staying with you and are highly engaged. What we're trying to do is figure out all of those moments that are orange where you're losing people to get more people through. So it's like, let's tighten that up. Let's make that orange green. And then more people come through. So at the end, you have, 40 instead of 4 or whatever number I said. I can't remember. Okay. So from this project, this is one of my favorite quotes. I remember what it was like to, I remember what it was like to play, but I can't feel it. I want to feel those good old happy days. So this was a really consistent theme with the people that we were talking to, and it was very different from what the men's team was saying. So, male supporters were very happy to give to the current team, and there was no issue with that. But what we found with the women's was it was so much more about like them and their own personal legacy and getting back to being connected to their teammates. So we ended up starting to talk to people in different ways. So this is just an example of a slide in the insights document that was like, okay, here are the like key things that you can see that are happening. And now how do we use those insights to actually go into future state planning? So that's kind of the core. Instead of just being like, hey, let's broadly figure out whatever we want to do. It's like, no, we're using these very specific things to then be like, okay, that's what they want, so that's what we're going to change. Thank you. So then we went into future state ideation. So you've got, okay, your assumptive journey, then you have your current journey based on donor insights, and then you move into ideation. So we sat down with the UBC team. We actually had a couple of potential donors sit with us, and we just jammed on like, okay, these are the insights, what to do, what to do. And I think, I'm sure you guys have seen this all the time. You have all these great ideas, and then they sit there because there's no one to implement them, or they cost money, or whatever it is. So we always split things into the very top row that's blue across is like, these are immediate things that you can action right away with zero money and zero extra staff. It's just like quick changes that you can make to language or whatever it is. The second row is like, you can, short term, midterm, you can implement them with your own staff. They might cost you a little bit. You might have to change, someone's role slightly to accommodate. And then the third row is like long term, where it's a big step change. There might be a systems change required. You might need like an additional staff person, or you need, $10,000 of funding to get this thing up and running. But it's all about building the long-term donor journey to move people across all the stages. And Sarah's going to talk us through the pilot that we ended up selecting to go forward with.
So the very quick answer is we went into an ambassador model. So we reached out to this community, realized that we had to really narrow the scope of who we were going to talk to, engage them, to really focus on what can we move right now. We had, so this was for, I don't think I mentioned it, it was for a field hockey team. So the field hockey alumni group, we engaged the coach, we had a development officer involved, and we also had alumni ambassadors. And so we worked with them, and RealPath project managed to make sure that we were making sure that the asks were done in a way that the audience that we'd interviewed wanted to be asked for. So instead of the spray and pray method of emailing and just saying, hey, you want to join? We instead really focused on touch points and making sure that we were making things extremely personal for those people. So we tracked all of our, the ambassadors were great. They were volunteers. That's a fancy word for volunteers. They were really excellent at getting back to us and letting us know how things went. And we had meetings to make sure every week to check in to make sure our progress was going well and the asks were going out. And so how we, because of how the donor journey mapping showed us, is that people didn't want to be asked the first time. They wanted to be asked a question. How are you doing? What's important to you? What are your memories about engaging with this institution? And then we were able to track that information to go back on the second reach out and say, hey, you told us that this was important. Would you be interested in partnering and becoming part of this focus? We ended up focusing on monthly giving. So we were able to engage our alumni population to sign up to be a monthly donor. Part of this was making sure that we had the right software there so that people's experience when they came and visited the page, they felt really connected. We used some of the photos. They really talked about the importance of having images of people that they knew or at least could recognize to be able to have that confidence of where they were giving.
And one of the other things that Sarah mentioned earlier was, we didn't have a lot of email addresses for these people because their name changed or whatever those old email addresses were. So part of the project was actually to get the volunteers to reach out to people on social networks that they were already connected to them and find out, like, grab that data to be able to put into the system so that it could move with us.
Yeah, and as you saw, one of our ambassadors on her own account she went on Instagram, got her 4-year-old to film her in her late 90s tracksuit. Late 90s, like that's how little money they had. This was late 90s, should have been early 90s. But the whole idea of really putting it out there first of why they needed to be connected. And then this was how we ended up, as I was talking about, this was the entire donor journey for monthly giving and really setting the timelines and the asks to follow up for relationship building. So we made sure when we, now what we've done is we've actually used this template and then gone on to our other sport programs to first get the insights. That's the key to find out, can we use this and replicate it over and over again? And then be able to, that's really when we take that hard turn back into how do we implement this across other groups without having to spend as much time really diving into all of the different nitty-gritty pieces.
Yeah, so for each phase of that monthly donor journey, we had like a moment. Okay, here's the step. Here's why. Here are the tasks. Who's doing it, so that it could actually be executed very seamlessly. And it was kind of like, okay, this is our future state journey, but because it's a pilot, we're executing that so quickly that we can learn very rapidly and kind of move into the next phase. Results.
Okay, so this is the numbers that you want. So the huge jump is that we had a 6-time year-over-year monthly revenue from those monthly giving gifts. So we had a huge step up. We also had, I know, woohoo, that's what everyone wants to hear. Monthly donors are challenging to be able to get someone to commit to having that paycheck, but that's what we realized when we asked them, what do you want to do? Well, I want to feel connected. I want to make sure that they know that I care and that I can be there with them. And so that's what we were able to do. One really cool thing is when we talked to the team, we said, what would you want to do? And when team members play at UBC on the field hockey team, they each all wear a bracelet when they travel, and that came up. That was somebody's memory. So an athlete on the team made bracelets for every alumni that signed up to be a monthly donor, and that was a surprise. So when the person got signed up, a week later, this came in the mail with a handwritten note from an athlete, and that like locked it in, and that person was there for like we still have, our maintenance has been really strong. So that has been one of the big things of looking at what are those key touch points and where do you spend the time when you're running a marathon and just trying to grab a drink of water as you're sprinting along.
And I think one of the most unexpected things that came out of this was the program had the largest single donation in its history. So that's not who we were targeting. Another clap. So yes.
And I have to tell this quick story. It was at the end of the pandemic. I was on a mental health walk in the forest, as you do, and I got a call from an unknown number. I answered it, and it was from someone who'd been reached out to by this program, who had forwarded it on to an 88-year-old woman who we had no idea who this woman was, she had email, she was on email, and she reached out and she said, it's been 50 years since I've been engaged, and I can see by the messaging that you want me to be involved, and she made a $75,000 donation to create the first endowment for the field hockey program at UBC. So it's like, not like who knows what the chances were, but just in terms of that time, what we were able to flip and turn over was incredible. And since that time, 2 years ago, we've had another donor come forward and do a $50,000 donation. So talk about like going from zero to hero because we spent the time really learning and listening. I think that was the key for us.
And it's also like, if, we kind of have like an argument a lot where I'm like, stop focusing so much on high value donors. You need to broaden the base. And she's like, we have to focus on high value donors. Like this is, we go back and forth. This is all the time. But this was just such a clear example of like, you broaden your base, you just have no idea what's going to come out of it. And it was just like such a sweet, I think we were like high-fiving all day that day. It was so great. Okay, so overall, a lot of benefits in doing this type of work. Not only do you get like really rich insights, but you can also just have such a clear understanding of what the opportunities are in front of you. And you don't have to have this sort of internal battle of, should we do it, should we not do it? Because it's based on what you know your supporters actually want. So it's very clear going forward, and everyone's aligned and everyone's happy. And also your staff are happier because you can say to them, that thing that you are spending all of this time on, the supporters actually don't want. So we can stop doing that. And that person usually knows that. Why are we doing this? They can stop doing that and spend their time on things that really drive people across the journey. And it's just, it's so much better for everyone. Anything else you want?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think just because we're short of time, I think we just wanted to give you that broad picture, and really, as we move forward, we use all of these insights when we do our crowdfunding campaigns, when we go out and do any of our annual campaigns. It's how can we bring in these insights and make sure that we're using that information as we plan rather than our assumptions. And my favorite quote from this journey is, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So just remember that one.
I said ass really quietly.
Yeah.
Who knows how many kids are here today.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so I'll just leave you with, organizations that sort of use this in the best way are those that are like, we actually don't know that much about our donors, and we need to. Organizations that know that they're using assumptions, and usually it's really hard to see your own assumptions. It's just like human nature. But if you think about, what does my CEO think about our donors? That doesn't quite ring true to me. Then you'll start to see like, okay, there are a lot of assumptions that we're using. And then also organizations that have sort of individual giving is stagnating, and it's like, okay, how do we get to that next boost? And it's really, okay, now we'll go deep and understand who. So I invite you to think about whether you really know your supporters and the experience that they're having with you. Not your own internal donor journey, but the experience that they're really having. Questions?
Thank you.
All right. That was so interesting. Thank you. We have time for just a few questions. Do you run fundraising programs and campaigns year round or focus on key periods?
So that's a great question. So we used to, at UBC, we have a challenge that we are really busy during the school year. So now what we've done is we do micro campaigns throughout the year, but we really focus the majority of this work on the planning to launch in late August, early September. That's the one with the most success, partly because I think for the most part, even if you don't have school-age children, that renewed kind of new year of September has been really successful for us. And usually people haven't spent all of their money. We do an event in February, and that is one of the hardest times of our year to get money in the door.
That makes sense. Great. Is there a category of insights that are most powerful in terms of engaging supporters? For example, values, interests, memories from yesteryear?
I think values is always like the very biggest, most important thing, and making sure, like one of the things that we talk about is, sure, you can get lots of different donors, but if they don't actually connect with what your values are, you maybe get one donation from them and never again, and it's actually a waste of your money. So what you want to do is only target those donors that you can have an extended relationship with, because they're going to stay with you, give you, on and on and on, and then the cost of acquisition becomes much lower. So yeah.
So yeah, I think we didn't spend time convincing people to change minds. Instead, we looked at who already had interest in getting involved.
Gotcha. If you were to do this campaign again, what, if anything, would you do differently?
You did it again.
Yeah, so we've done it again. I think what we would keep the same is the really narrow focus. So we did an era of about 15 years of alumni, so people that we knew we had engaged at that time, and that's the group that we did. We tried to do a bigger one, and it failed spectacularly. So now that's one thing that we would keep to, is really look at a demographic-specific group in order to use this information at a 10x level, or actually I think it was 6x, but that idea of instead of getting a couple more of when we actually did this with a big group on one team, and we got 2 monthly donors, and it was a spectacular fail because we tried to do everything at the same time.
Yeah. I would also say, so I used to do this work in the corporate world, and we would do it for L'Oreal and Microsoft and Walmart and all these big organizations. And one of the things I found in the nonprofit space is everyone seems to believe that you need 15, 20 different donor journeys, and that's not always true. When you have the real insights, you can see that most of your people are moving through things in very similar ways. And we create so much complexity for ourselves that's very, very hard to manage. And you might have 10% of people are doing unusual things, but most people are often doing the same. And what I found working with nonprofits is that very often you'll have one journey for a particular broad segment. Sometimes you'll have two. Sometimes when you're talking to people, you're like, okay, these are totally different reasons that you're interacting in different ways, but typically it's the same. So yeah, don't be too scared when you're like, oh, it can't possibly be only one. Sometimes it is.
All right, one more. How would you recommend starting a framework like this?
I know this answer exactly. So you definitely have to start with your assumptive journey map. you start with your own internal assumptions. You go around the table. You can even sort of have assumptions go in a box because you know the CEO's assumptions, but it's awkward to like say it to the CEO. So you put them all in a box. You go through them and you create the map. That's like, this is what we believe is happening. You use your own data that you have to say, okay, these are, this is where numbers are impacting. And then you go and talk to people based on uncovering what those assumptions are and figuring out, okay, these are the assumptions that, we're making the biggest decisions on that feels really uncomfortable. That's what you want to find out.
So I know we didn't get to all the questions, but you can obviously find these two. I'm sure they'd be happy to chat with you. So thank you very much. Let's give them a big round of applause.